Hello, 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 and welcome to tonight's DisruptHers series. I am so excited about tonight. I can hardly stand it. I absolutely positively have been waiting all week long for this moment, and here we are. For those of you all who don't know, I want to make sure that I am where I'm supposed to be. So do me a favor, whether you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, give me a quick comment and let me know that you're on. Let me know that that you can see me. Okay. I'm going to make sure that I am on everywhere. All right, there we go. I am Dr. Matisa Wilbin, and this is Disrupt Hers. What is Disrupt Hers? Well, Disrupt Hers is a group of women who come together to alter systems. We are women who have decided that we're going to not just sit by and kind of see things go and talk about them, but that we're absolutely positively going to look at systems, address them, and ultimately change them. Hey, Dr. Weathers, good to see you. Dr. Yo, I see my folks coming on both Facebook and YouTube. Do me a favor. Again, do like Dr. Yo. Let me know that you are here. This is going to be a phenomenal conversation. I'm so excited that you're joining us tonight. Tasha, good to see you, sis. I'm so glad you're here. Also, do me a favor. Let me know where you're sharing from. I see a lot of people who are on. They're sharing. Again, this is going to be a fantastic conversation. Hey, Shaquavia. I'm excited because I have one of my best friends in the entire world who's going to be joining us. Not only is she my best friend, she's a wife, she's a mother, she's a business owner, she works for the government, she's a counselor. I'm telling you, she's an elder in the church. She does a whole lot of stuff. So we're going to have a phenomenal conversation tonight. But before we do this, I want to set this up. So do me a favor. Again, I'm looking at my numbers. I want to get those up just a little bit more. Share with somebody. Let somebody know that we're on. We are going to have a phenomenal conversation. Shaquavia, thank you for sharing. I want you to share. The theme tonight is I Can't Breathe. And at first, before I thought about what we're going to do, I had something else planned. But I decided that this conversation is necessary for what we're dealing with right now. I want to set it up because right before I bring in April, and I want to tell you kind of the backstory and how this is going to fit into I Can't Breathe. I am from Eastern Kentucky, proud native of Hazard, Kentucky, very, very small town, predominantly white, probably less than 1% African American. And so as I grew up in Kentucky, I wasn't as aware of race as much as it would seem. Appalachian, community oriented. Most of the people who are Black in Hazard are related. That's no joke. Shout out to the Olingers, the Joneses, the Combs, the Lunts, and the Hagans, because that's the predominant families that we have there. But for many of us, we just kind of did our day to day. And I was really sort of oblivious to some things that I would later on think about when I was in college. I was in the band, which was phenomenal for me, predominantly white as well. Had a great experience, great group of friends that I'm friends with to this day. My band director is a white woman who taught me many of the lessons that I know today. Hey, Kristen, there's my cousin. Taught me some amazing lessons, and I've been reflecting on all of this today. But when I went to college, I realized that there were some experiences that I had missed. I realized when I went to college that my thinking would become a little bit different. And that's when I met April. So I'm setting up my introduction of her. Went to college at Center College, a small, predominantly white school. I think at the time, and April can correct me, we had about 1,000 students and there were about 24 Black students on campus. So as you can imagine, there was a lot going on. And, we faced at that point some real challenges. April and I met as freshmen. She would eventually become the Black Student Union president. I was the chaplain, go figure. And we forged a relationship then that by junior year, we became inseparable. And so I wanted to bring her on so that we could share our experiences. We could talk about how we maneuver through the systems and then come up with some solutions. So with all of that background, I'm so excited right now to bring in my sister, Miss April Easley Starks. Let's welcome her to this Disrupt Her series. Hey, girl.
Hello. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing well. You set up the discussion very good.
Good. Thank you, sister. I'm laughing because we look the same. We are so in tune.
Yes, I saw that. I was like, okay, well, we just gonna go with it.
We're connected. Well, and maybe one day we'll talk about our hair journey because we're both.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was a journey for both of us. And so we kind of did that together and then separate and then together again. So
yeah,
that'll be
some of that. Yeah. And some of that actually from my experience would even tie in to what we're talking about tonight, but I'm not going to bring that up tonight, but that's a whole of discussion as well.
Okay. Well, let me say this because we're going to jump right into the discussion. And listen, I need you all to post your comments. We want this to be engaging. I know we've got Dr. Yo on. I know from an educational perspective, she's probably got a lot to say. Shaquavia is a college student. My cousin Kristen, she's been there protesting in Louisville. So I know we've got a lot of folks on who are going to be able to give some really good insight. So if you've not done so, I need you to share right now. We're going to be talking about some really good stuff. So April, this is what I wanted to jump into. And I want to say this, first of all, April and I think alike a lot of ways, but we don't always agree. And I love that because it creates a well-rounded conversation, but we both are solution oriented and we both have a point of view as it relates to what we're dealing with. So that's why I think this conversation is going to be special. So April, let me just start with, what do you see in terms of what's going on right now? What does your heart say about where we are as a society? That's a big question, but.
That is a big question. And you're pushing me out of my comfort zone right now because it's been difficult for me to really vocalize at the moment because there's so much.
Yeah.
And I honestly have been striving to take those moments to think through and to really see kind of what's going on before and to deal with my feelings.
Okay.
Yeah. So I really didn't want to speak too much even out of that and out of my emotions. So you are definitely pushing me out of my comfort zone. So thank you. You are going to be a disruptor.
That's right. We disrupting some stuff tonight.
You are going to be. So for me, what I see is definitely just we all know, we see the buildup of things that have taken place and basically it has erupted from a suppression of conversations and things that needed to be dealt with and addressed. And sometimes I've seen a lot of posts where people are saying, I'm just tired. And I think that happens over time of striving to address things, or you're encountering roadblocks when you're wanting to bring something to the forefront. It actually makes you tired. And, so I feel like we went through a time where, yes, individuals were still active for sure in their daily lives. Something that we mentioned earlier that was good. And my thought was thinking of how there are people every day who go on their jobs and they're protesting. It may not be in the method that we're seeing it now, but they're protesting because they are standing in the gap and they're being those representatives. They're suppressing maybe their response to something because they see a greater need for them to activate in that arena that they're in. And so I think what's going on now, you have just seen an eruption of individuals who have been tired, just constantly fighting for things that sometimes people don't see, but we know and we feel, and that, sometimes we're told like, huh, what, You're like, no, it's present. It's real. It may be invisible to you, but we see it fully. And so I think the world now has not had a choice but to see it.
Absolutely.
And so that's a good thing.
I love what you said. You said a couple of different things, and I want to start with one of the things you said. You said that we've suppressed discussion, right? And that's why I think this is key. Protesting is fine. I've been a part of that. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to sit down and reason together, right? But what you said that was so good is people have been experiencing it and maybe not being able to articulate it, or people are doing it within their own organization. Let's fast forward, or excuse me, rewind back to where we met. Center College in Kentucky, really small, what we call a PWI. And again, for those who don't know, that's a predominantly white institution. I think my numbers are correct. There were about 1,000 students and there were about 25 Black students. Is that right?
I believe so.
I think that's about right. It was enough that we all sat at the same cafeteria. That much bigger. So talk to me about kind of what your experience was, because April, if I'm not mistaken, you went to an all Black high school, right?
Well, historically. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. But by the time that I was there at Central High School, because of programs that they had implemented at the time, like our magnet program, which ventured into medical and law, there was more diversity, of course, at that time, but it was still predominantly African American high school, and the history was still rich. And even now, the alumni is still going strong from Central High School there, are here in Louisville, Kentucky. So, yeah, that was my background. So coming there, it actually was a somewhat of a culture shock for me to be more of a smaller number in representation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was different. And then when I, got a roommate who came from a very small town in Kentucky who never had an encounter with an African American, now you have to live with her. That was, that was an adjustment as well for her and myself, but we ended up becoming great friends. And I felt like she learned a lot about me that she didn't know, maybe based upon some biases or just not even having the exposure. And exposure is so important for growth and development. It is very, very important. And I felt like that helped us in our relationship by rooming together and adjusted. You had to either swim or sink. So, we had to adjust. And we began to swim. We start to see what was going on and what we needed to help nurture our desires that we had as minority students on campus. And so then that provoked back to those discussions that are needed. It provoked discussions among us where we begin to talk about it and begin to strategize what we need to do, not realizing we were really disrupting a system.
Right. But what's interesting, April, you were talking, I forgot about your first roommate. I forgot about her. Did she play basketball?
No. So I did have, Leslie. You remember her?
Yes, I do. Yep. Yeah. What I was going to say, my early remembering of going to center is a little bit different. Now, when I was in high school, I kind of was mentioning this before, I had a really close group of friends who were white. Now, for the most part, socially, I hung out with my family. We have a really big family. So it was my cousins and aunts and uncles and all of that. And then through school, I was mostly white classes and all of that. And no problem. I loved my band members, that they are my family even today. I mentioned the band director, Miss Pauletta Smith, who I used to call my other mother, and she still is very much a mother to me. She taught me a lot of stuff. And so I thought those relationships were going to go with me to college. Okay. Now, my early remembering of college is I had a roommate, both of you and I love, Mamie. She's
Yes.
from Sierra Leone, raised in the
Yes.
UK. But if you remember, we were brought to campus early for, I don't know what they call it, but you come and you meet people on campus and all that kind of stuff. And I remember my room was, my dorm hallway was mostly white. Mamie and I were the only two students of color on that floor. For that whole week before everybody else came, and it was just freshmen, we had a great time. We talked, we bonded. We were all freshmen. That was our commonality.
Yeah.
Once school started, right? And if somebody's watching, I'm going to open this up in a minute for questions. But if anybody can, identify with these experiences, I would love to hear it. I remember vividly once classes started and everybody else was on campus, the girls that I had met and bonded with that I thought were going to be my friends off campus, it was a totally different story. Walk past me as if they never had met me before, would look across campus and not look at me in the eye. And I remember thinking, what in the world is this? Now, again, I wasn't naive. I knew that where I grew up was not a perfect place by any stretch. I didn't think that there was no issues with race at all. But I guess I was not woke. I became woke on a college campus with 24 Black students because I never really thought about it before.
Yeah.
I never thought about how my race would impact me. And I never thought it was just so interesting to me that those same girls would it felt like they ignored me, and we never gained a relationship at all. And that continued. And so I want to know if you feel like your experience was the same. I feel like for the most part, most of the Black students, we hung tight together. Mm-hmm. We were like a really small family because of everything we were experiencing on the outside.
Yeah. I think that helped us. We were able to gain a bond from what we felt like we were lacking socially. Mm-hmm. I think one thing that really helped me, to be very honest, was the fact that I played basketball. So that was like a family as well. Mm-hmm. Although, I was the only African American on the team, but we had a commonality. Sure. Because of our love for the game.
Sure.
And, those women became a family and they had my back. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was necessarily, a racial thing. They had my back because they was like, no, we on the same team. If she go down, we're going to take you down. Yeah. So right. that was our common thread there, genuinely. Mm-hmm. I felt like they were sincere mm-hmm. in the relationship that we had just from the game of basketball. Mm-hmm. Basketball still does it today. We see that. That's why they're provoking. I was watching on Sports Center today. They're trying to encourage these athletes to mm-hmm. use your voice. When we just came from maybe as early as last year, a comment said to LeBron, just shut up and dribble, but now people are crying for them. Use your influence, speak up, because the sports bring so many people together. Mm-hmm. They can now utilize that as a means of change to have the discussions. That have been ignored. So yes. That's actually a really good thing. I'm excited about that. And the football players speaking up too, NFL players.
Yeah. Well, one thing, Brittany, I put this comment up because she said she had the same experience her freshman year at Iowa State, which I know somebody who went to Iowa State. So I'm assuming it might be that stereotypically, predominantly white sort of institution. And the purpose of the first half of this is to really just bring out some of the issues that we felt, because what I don't want to do is make people feel like they are alone in what they're experiencing, because from my experience and from what I've heard from other people, there's some of the same things. So when I was thinking about this idea of I can't breathe, I wanted to be able to bring those things out, because as you mentioned earlier, it takes exposure to bring healing. And there are a lot of people who might say, oh, I went to Center and I didn't have those issues at all. And I want to make sure that we're clear that we're not saying this is everybody's experiences, but I do know that a lot of us who were there together, we had some of these same things. We felt like we couldn't breathe. It impacted our social relationships. It impacted whether or not, we were in dating relationships. It impacted our experience, whether or not we were going to be in fraternities or sororities. all of those things impacted us. Now we're going to talk about the fact that we made it. We're going to talk about solutions, but were there any other things, April, that stood out to you when we talk about systems and systemic issues that students of color had to deal with?
I think it's just that feeling of that you're not heard. The feeling that you're not heard, and that you have to vocalize every single thing because no one else sees the elephant in the room, or at least don't want to acknowledge it. The elephant's there, but people walk around it. Like you said, those girls just not even saw you and kept looking straight. You're like, we were just talking in the dorm before everybody showed up on campus, before your peers, maybe who you wanted to be amongst and to be most popular among, and you didn't fit that mode, or you didn't fit the system. So now I just have to look past you. And so maybe things were right there in the room, elephants in the room, and people just chose to just, not address it. And so we had to take it upon ourselves to address some of those things, or it was not going to be addressed. Because there's one thing about systems. Systems begin to operate and continue to just go. If you are to liken it to an assembly line at Ford or Toyota or something, that manufactures cars, that line is just supposed to go seamlessly. When it goes to the next route, you put that, and that system is supposed to just keep flowing. And that's how literal systems that we function in flow, unless something comes in to jack up one of those systems.
That's right.
The whole line doesn't stop.
That's right.
We got to start building these Ford trucks. What happened? What happened at the section where they put the muffler on?
That's right.
And then they have to start seeing what's up, looking at it, adjusting, bringing in their engineers to begin to see what needs to be readjusted or shaped, or even taken off the line to add a different part to it.
That's right.
And that's why they sometimes have those recalls. Hey, there's a recall on the 2019 Ford F54. This we found out was wrong in the system. So right now, that's what we're dealing with. Look, the recall stuff.
That's it.
Some stuff has been produced. We just let it all go through the line. It was kind of messed up, but we just threw something in there real quick to keep the system going like it's supposed to, because we got to get this out. And that's what we got to get it out. We got to keep it going. That's what our capitalist society has done. We got to keep moving. And this whole COVID and everything has shut all us down. Then on top of that, people being in the house and shut down from COVID, then some other stuff was exposed. And it's this eruption, like, okay, well, now we got to recall a lot of things to now see how we're going to build this engine for this in a better manner and make the system better, so that we can then produce what needs to be produced in a way that's going to help us holistically.
I think the other part about that, I think that's such a good analogy. I think the other part about that I was thinking of is when you are on that assembly line, whether it's the Ford plant or some other manufacturing plant, typically you don't question it. You're there as a part of the system, and you're assuming whoever put it together must have known what they were doing, right? And you're let's just say you've got the steering wheel part, you're doing your steering wheel, somebody else is doing theirs, and you might be fine in the system because where you are is air conditioned, where you are is not going too fast, right? You have all the tools you need to get that steering wheel on. But there's another part of the assembly line where you don't have everything that you need, right? You don't have the screwdriver, or you don't have whatever it is to make what you do, excuse me, to make what you do effective. But and I love that analogy, because I feel like, to your point, that's what we're doing, what we have done for a long time. We've all operated within this system, and Melinda put, many feel helpless up against the system. Yeah, because you're not the one that created it. You're there trying to survive. You're trying to make the money for your family and do what's necessary, until, like we're seeing being done now, there's a disruption. Not just an interruption, because an interruption is momentary. You interrupt and then they keep going in the same way. But a disruption says, we're going the wrong way. We need to change it. When I remember, to your point about not feeling like we were heard, that was definitely an issue. And I'm so glad I see some amazing people on here. I see my old assistant band director, who is a friend, John Norris, different people who are teaching and helping people who are younger. I want to make sure that we have this conversation, because there are a lot of people who don't feel like their voice is heard, but there are a lot of people who are feeling helpless, and they suffer in silence. One of the things we experienced when we were in school was we didn't have any full-time Black faculty.
Yes.
Now, some people would say, what's the big deal? We had some top-rate educators. You and I both talk about the fact we love Center. We had amazing education.
Yes.
It prepared us very well for what we're doing, but there were some deficits in our experience that I think is symbolic of what we're seeing today. So there were no people of color, and some people would say, what's the big deal? That person, is a scholar in chemistry. Your area was economics. That person is amazing in economics. What would you say to people who don't think race even needs to matter when it comes to education and teachers in the classroom? What would you say to that from your experience?
Mm-hmm. I think it's good for individuals to see people that look like them and who can potentially, and I say potentially because sometimes we generalize. So for example, if we say, we want an African-American professor because we feel like that professor is going to relate to us. And let's just say that person, their whole experience is maybe different from what we know as maybe our experience. Mm-hmm. And then they may come in and say, okay, what's wrong? This is fine. And we're looking like, no, it's not.
Yeah, right.
So we can't necessarily say that. But I think the point of us pushing that was definitely that we have someone look like us, that there was diversity across the campus, and hopefully potentially have someone that can relate to our experience and to be a voice for us in the system. So to Melinda's point of people feeling hopeless in the system, you wanted someone in those rooms that we were not in to be at the table who will represent us and speak for us in those spaces that we were not allowed in.
Absolutely.
That was important.
But let me even add, that's it. Let me add this too. I remember when I was teaching at my former university, and I was over a student group. This is to your point of having a voice. And I remember it was a leadership group. These were scholars, but they were also people who did a lot of community service. Mm-hmm. And what I discovered when I started looking at the past groups is none of them were representative, right? They didn't have a lot of diversity. And I kept asking myself, I was like, why is it that, you have student group after student group, year after year after year, and there's no diversity? Are you telling me no students of color likes to do service in school? Are you telling me no students of color qualify? And when I started digging, what I realized is there were a couple of things that we could do to impact the application process that would bring in a more diverse pool. Now, to your point, I think this program had been going on for maybe 10 years before I got the program. But it took a person who was interested and intentional about all students being successful to say, wait a minute. And by that next year, it had diversified across race, across gender. It wasn't just students who were 4.0s, but there were some 3.0s in there who could do well, right? And so to your point, having somebody in the room absolutely matters. It doesn't mean that everybody's experience is exactly the same just because they're a faculty member of color, but it does mean that perhaps that different set of eyes and that different perspective because of those experiences is going to bring something richer to the conversation, so that now it's not just this one group of people, but it's all of us coming together.
Yes. Yes. And the best system we know for individuals who are striving to be great leaders, which there are many on this particular listening to us and will probably listen later, who are great leaders. We know that we want people in our groups who do represent a variety of backgrounds, ethnicities, and voices that are not something you said when you were introducing. We don't agree all the time, but I love that. I love being around people that don't agree with me.
Me too.
I'm sorry, I don't know where people get this. I just want yes people or people who agree with me. I'm not like that. I love hearing different voices. And at the end of the day, the beauty of someone who can effectively communicate and move change is someone who's able to agree to disagree. There's still unity in that because I see where you are. And I respect your perspective. You respect my perspective. But at the end of the day, we're saying, okay, if you're stuck on that and you're firm about it, okay, I at least see where you are, and vice versa. But then how are we going to move the needle? That
at the end of the day,
that's how we're going to move the needle.
That's right.
That's the goal.
That's right. One other thing that I wanted to address, and I'd like to hear your perspective on this. I am one of the things that I like to really talk about and train on. Oh, I wanted to bring this point up. Mindy said one person to break the silence in the system. Yes. One person to say, stop the assembly line. I know we're moving, but we can be much more efficient and we can be better at producing if we had a couple of different kind of people or a couple of different kind of tools.
Yes.
Right. One person to break that silence. But I was going to say, I wanted to talk about one thing because I know we've got a diverse group on, which I really love. People from different places, Black, white, educators, etc. One of the ways that I felt like I couldn't breathe, especially as I was kind of learning my own voice, right? That's what being a DisruptHer is about. It's about learning that you have a voice and being able to speak up in a way that brings change, right? Not just to say something, but to really change something, change the system. But I'll be honest, I had experiences in high school and in college, and even as a professor, where there were what we call microaggressions, or things that are said that, you know, they're not necessarily intentionally racist or anything like that, but somebody likened it to a mosquito bite. You know, there are things that are said where if the mosquito bites you one time, not a big deal. If the mosquito bites you twice, nah. But after about 10 times of that mosquito bite, you're like, wait a minute. And I feel like there were times in my life where I felt like I couldn't breathe because I didn't know how to speak up. You know, little things that were said that I felt like if I said something, people would say in response, oh, I'm not racist. And the point wouldn't be about trying to point, you know, a finger at whether one is racist or not, but to say, that really makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, when you told that when not even a racist joke, but when you said that to me, it made me feel like, you know, when you, for example, when a white student of mine would say something that alluded to the idea that I'm only a professor in that school because they needed more Black faculty, right? There is an implied something there, but more than not, there is a microaggression that sometimes you can't always pinpoint. I've been in situations where I've heard people tell racist jokes and I didn't have a voice at the time. And I kind of went, did they just tell a racist joke? You know, how do I address this? I'm having a whole conversation in my mind because I was young, like, but they're supposed to be my friend. Like, do I say something about this right now? Or do I, you know what I'm saying? But then there are other times, and I want to hear your ideas about this. I can remember being on campus and a faculty member asking me, well, white faculty member, well, where did you get your degree? He's questioning me. How long have you been on campus? And I would tell him, oh, do you have tenure yet? And I'm thinking to myself, dude, there are 2 Black faculty members on this campus, and you and I used to teach right beside each other. And we could talk about mispronouncing names and calling me everybody else's name. And there's 2 Black women, and you don't know my face from the other woman who is very thin and does not look like me, right? Like you don't care enough. But this faculty member is asking me this question. He's like, again, are you tenured? Yes. Well, where did you get your degree? Because it was as if he was trying to figure out where my background was. Did I belong on a campus like the university that I used to teach for? Those are microaggressions. And I want to bring that up because for some people, it's such a hard concept. They're like, what's the big deal? When I've told that story before, they're like, well, maybe he meant blah, blah, blah. No, I know what he meant. I could tell by the context of the question. So my question to you is, number one, have you ever dealt with anything kind of like that, those microaggressions? And then how do you address it if you have?
Mm-hmm. I think your point is valid, and hopefully even some young people will watch this. On my shirt, I'm represent today. I'm raising the future. I wanted to wear that to definitely make a statement to the point of our goal is to push the future generation. I have a son that's about to go to college. I'm pushing him. I'm training him. I'm teaching him on how to be vocal, how to address things in the moment, because I did not know how to address it in the moment. Like you said, when you're encountering it and you're just like, whoa, nobody's really ever talked to you about it, but then you're like, wait a minute, something right about that. And then you go back to your room, or you go home, or you driving home from work, and you're like, they was meaning something with that. It's like a delayed reaction. Mm-hmm. But after you have multiple mosquito bites and you're starting to show more and more, some defense mechanism rises up in you to say, wait a minute, I'm going to have to address that in the moment. So to your point about moments where I feel like I couldn't breathe, I felt like throughout even, college, even in my career, moments where I felt like I couldn't breathe was when it hit me that was something. And my breath, like I missed the moment.
Good.
It hit like I missed that opportunity to say something, and literally rehearsing it back in my head to say, how would I respond? How would I respond? Yeah. And thank God for age and experience. Glory. I appreciate God for age and experience and wisdom. And also submitting myself. I got to throw this in here. So I'm not trying to make this a spiritual conversation, but to even sometimes take a breath to not allow my flesh to respond the way that I want to. So through that experiences and the leading of the Spirit of God, showing me how to navigate. So even now, I can honestly say I'm better at hitting it in the moment. I've recently had, even in my position now, encountered something and I had to address it instantly. And that only came through multiple mosquito bites.
That's good.
Where I missed it. Honestly, I was like, oh man, I got bit. We just scratched it all night. Like, oh man.
Irritated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But now what I've learned through experience, I put my off on. We put off on, we know we're going in. I put my off on when I know I'm going in certain systems, environments. I put the off on symbolically.
That's good.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the repellent so that I can come in a manner in which to help this person see what they're saying, what they're doing is unacceptable.
That's good.
I know I can't change people. I know we can't legislate morality, but what I can do is let you know that I'm here and that I'm not going to sit silent. The phrase unmuted has been like ringing on me for like the last couple of years. You're unmuted. We're unmuted to say what is needed to be said to address those issues that some of us have unfortunately missed opportunities. We shouldn't be hard on ourselves, give ourselves grace.
Right.
Just be thankful to say, and sometimes we need to reflect, man, that happened to me. I didn't say nothing at the time. I didn't address it. I didn't call it out. And then reflect and then see how you can best deal with those when they come now. Don't leave them unchecked. Don't leave those situations unaddressed, because it not only suppresses within us and causes us issues, even physically, health-wise, causes us issues, but it doesn't move the needle.
It doesn't move the needle.
Yeah, we still got to protest like every day. When we go on our job, when we go into situations, essentially that's the word. I'm not talking about rioting and stuff, because that stuff's unacceptable. Sorry, that's my point. But I'm talking about protesting, where you stand and basically letting people know this is unacceptable, and we're going to address it, and we're going to have change. So whatever circle of influence you're in, every disruptor that's on here, you may be in the medical field, stand.
Yeah.
Hit it in the moment, address those situations. You may be in government, you may be in education, whatever sphere of influence that we encounter, we have to disrupt those systems. That's the only way that some things are going to change, and allow ourselves to be in those rooms to influence and gain strategy. And I think that's something we did well as a group. It wasn't just me and you. We can name, even not me, like different ones we were with, Michelle, and even people who came on with us as allies, Jeremy Thompson.
That's right.
Boy, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, other races that joined in with us to see, they weren't trying to avoid what was there. They joined in with us. Jason Stone. I'm people coming to my mind, but it was so many people who jumped in to say, this is what we need to do. And we gained a strategy. Once we gained a strategy, then we entered into the room. We scheduled a meeting with the dean, with the president, and we didn't go unprepared. I think Center College helped me in so many ways. I love my experience there. Like you said, we don't bash the school. It's a great school. I learned so much, but it helped me as a person developing, even as a young adult, to gain things that I needed to implement change. How do I do this? And literally everything that we had on our list, we were given. Outside of one thing.
That's right.
It was one thing we didn't get. We still a little salty about that. But for the most part,
yeah.
And we probably had maybe about 10 or so things on there. And I wrote them down just to run down. I mean, our Black Student Union was enhanced. We gained our own facility. We wanted a space where we could be in. They gave us that. We were connected with families in the community who were minorities and African-American families. And I love that. My family was great. I love the family that I received. We gained African-American speakers and convocations, because we brought that up. That we needed more representation. And so we start getting speakers to come in. We had, you remember the play that we had with the all Black cast?
Yep.
Thank you to Michelle who directed that. Was it the Color Museum? Yeah, the Color Museum. Great. Yeah. It was packed out every single show. People came to support us. And I think we made a strong statement. So there was some things that we were able to do by organizing and strategizing, and then getting into the rooms that we needed to in the space, and as well as the faculty that was hired due to us speaking up.
That's right. So I would just say two things that I would kind of reinforce that you said that I think is so good. You know, you mentioned the idea of the off for the mosquito. And for me, that's the strategy. Like the way you respond culturally. Now we're going to talk about kind of like you said, those systems where we made those changes. But I love that idea of making sure that you're speaking up in the moment. And let me just say again, because you know, there's a diverse group of people watching. It's not just for people of color to speak up.
Yes.
All right. There are some things that as a person of color, as a Black person, other people might not understand its impact on you. I get that. Right. So like when I'm running a meeting, true story, running a meeting, I don't remember how I had my hair. It was done in some kind of fashion. All white people in the room. I'm running this meeting and this guy literally stops me mid-sentence and looks at my hair and is like, your hair is interesting. Now, I think I failed that test. I don't think I had my off on that day. And I think I felt the mosquito and hit at it. I swatted at it.
Yeah.
We got some amazing questions. We're about to get to y'all's questions. So I think I failed, April. I know you've been praying for
me. Look, that's all right. Sometimes we're not gonna get it, but it's a great experience because we do play it back later. And we're like, how can I, because we're ready for the next time. Just like, man, I failed that one.
And I think that's what we have to do, like you said, because you can't just go off on people, especially not anytime, but like certain environments, you want to make sure that what you're saying is received. Sometimes people get it, sometimes they don't. That's not your responsibility. But in the moment, really think about what's going to be effective in the moment. I really try to do that. And then to your point, we as students, and I'm going to make this point, then we're going to get to your questions. We mobilized, like you said. April was the president of the Black Student Union. I was an officer as a chaplain. We had lots of other people around as well. And we literally came together and was like, this university, we love many aspects of it, but it needs some change as it relates to people of color. We sat down and we strategized. These are the things that we want.
Yes.
Like April said, we went to the dean and we were prepared. Melinda asked the one thing we wanted was Black fraternities and sororities. They were not budging on that.
Yeah.
But every other thing. And we did not see ourselves as small, did we, April? Do you remember?
No.
At the time I think we might have been sophomores. MLK did not had a holiday, but we weren't acknowledging MLK Day as a university.
That's the good
We skipped school and protested. Maybe 10 of us. Didn't we? We protested and we were like, we are not going to school on MLK holiday. And guess what? They changed it. They gave us everything we asked for. So the point is, we didn't see ourselves small. By the time we were juniors and seniors, we were absolutely mobilizing like, we got to change some stuff around here. They hired a diversity person.
Yes.
That was the police's role.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she was the diversity director.
Hired somebody, and the school is not perfect now, but for those students who are on here, and we've seen some of them, Melinda, Toya, we made effective change on campus that directly benefited those who came behind us. Mm-hmm. Let's get to these questions, April, and I'll try not to talk so long next time. Brittany asks, how do we teach the younger generation to speak up and say something in the moment so this doesn't become a repeated cycle? What would you say to that?
That is so good. Great question. Because I'm in that season with my children. I have a son that's about to go to college. My other son will be a senior next year. And literally, I'll give you something practical that we do as a family. My husband and I, we have meetings with our children. We try to do at least once a week. Sometimes we may miss a week. But when we have those, we put them in pressure situations. We give them scenarios as if this is in your face. What's your response? So we try to give them, and it stems from things we've experienced. So we just pour it into them in hopes that they can then gain their own response from what we put in their face. And I think that helps because Matisa can probably attest to this. They're very articulate in their expressions of what they want, what they don't want, what they're going to accept, what they're not going to accept. So I think that practically actually throughout their teenage years, probably starting about 8th grade, has helped them develop some sense of repellent for them. Although we know there are going to be some things they're going to experience that we didn't hit on. We just tried to give them some training, little boot camp to be ready and to tell them it's coming.
That's good. That's good. Mm-hmm. So doing those scenarios, I would also say, help the students. And I know, Brittany, you work with a lot of students. There are some readings and stuff, some books just some knowledge that generally people don't have anymore. The history of people of color and just some of those kinds of things. So talk to them, get some readings, because sometimes people don't say anything because they don't know what to say. They know they want to say something. I want people to know those microaggressions are real. You're not crazy. You're not just thinking that, that you're off. Sometimes we do that. We're like, oh, maybe it's just me. It's not that big of a deal. No, these are things that we experience. So I love that. Teach them, sit down with your kids, talk to them, give them some readings that will help, and then they'll know what to say. All right, let's keep going. If you got questions, put them in the comments. Okay, this is one of my friends, John Norris. What advice would you give to white educators in a predominantly Black school district to allow the students to feel like they belong and have a role model? That's a good question. Going back to the topic, ensuring that the faculty are diverse and having role models to look up to. That's a great question.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Hopefully if there's an opportunity to have other individuals of their, ethnicity and culture or whatever into the education system, that's great. But if not, I would say I'm really big on pushing leaders now. Push them if you're in a high school, there's a leader among those students. So even if there's not a faculty member or a teacher, educator, or whatever in the building that is a minority, that leader student, push that student.
That's good.
Pour into that student. Let that student be the catalyst of movement and empowerment. That's the word I want. Empowerment for the students. Teach that young person how to harness that ability that they have, and then they can be a voice.
Good.
Among the voices. Push them. And just the mere fact that you said, John, thank you for that question. Just the mere fact that you would have a heart to ask that question, I will submit that you and people like you are individuals who have an open mind, have the eyes, that you see the elephant in the room. So you can be one of those solutions. We have solutions, and you're one of those solutions to say, hey, if the system is not moving right now to necessarily get an educator in place, I see that young man right there. He's 16, but that's okay. I'm going to pull him up. I'm going to pour the knowledge, the wisdom that you have, that heart that you have to see change and difference. Empower that young person and let that young person, man, our young people have so much creativity. With our wisdom and their creativity, man,
that's right.
Man, if we can couple that and bridge that together, this world is definitely on a massive momentum change. So if we can bridge that and then just help that young person see the significance of their voice, at that age, and say, well, no, we're going to use you to be a voice.
Yeah,
that's powerful.
I would just add too, if there are people in the community, people at a local university. We mentioned earlier Black sororities and fraternities. That is a phenomenal group of people to start looking for mentors. One thing that they did at Center, and April mentioned this, we had families, because the town that our college is in is extremely small as well. So they had families who volunteered to connect with us. So some of the people on here, Melinda and Latoya, Yolanda, these are people that we met way before they went to our school. We met them because of a program that the school had to take us to the community. So sometimes you have to either take the students outside of the school to the community or bring the community into the school, which is a phenomenal way.
That's a great way.
Yeah. So if you have those, build those relationships, then you can get some really good input there too. All right. Another question. This one's kind of long, so I'm not going to show it. But it says, not too long ago, I was in a meeting, the only African-American, and the leader of the meeting ignored that I was in the room. He talked around me and didn't acknowledge my input. This was the first time I'd experienced this blatantly. Didn't speak up and should have. She didn't want to be called the angry Black woman. Heard that before. What suggestions, April, would you offer to Latoya if that were to happen again? Totally ignored in the room. What would you do?
Yeah, that's the tough one, to not turn into the angry Black woman.
Didn't you hear what I said? I'm teasing.
Look, sometimes you gotta laugh or cry. We're gonna laugh at one off. Right. But that's a really good one. Hopefully the person is somewhat approachable if they're in a leadership position. That's a whole nother discussion about leadership. People being in position that don't need to be in position. But I'm gonna let that one go because I might get on a rant with that. They're in leadership positions, but they're not leaders.
Right.
I would say hopefully to be able to set up a time with that individual to discuss, and don't come with into the meeting with a preconceived notion of how they're going to receive it. So then you're not let down or disappointed.
That's good.
Your whole goal is to say, I'm going to speak my truth. That's it. Whether you receive it or not, I'm going to speak my truth, and let that person know, so that hopefully they'll see their ways. If they're sincere, they'll make the adjustments. You'll see in the next meeting some change, hopefully, if they're sincere. If not, and it continues, then that's when it goes to another level, to whoever, that person is. But us just having the boldness and the bravery to be okay with taking those steps. Because sometimes it's hard, because you feel like, I'm kicking against the grain of things. And like Melinda said again, that was a good statement. You feeling hopeless in the system.
Yeah.
It's bigger than you individually.
But you know what? I would have been petty. And Latoya, you can give me, as a clarifying question, what do you mean they didn't take your input? I would have politely raised my hand. Excuse me. I mentioned kind of my background in high school, and April probably wouldn't have done that. So that's why she ain't saying nothing, because she wouldn't have did that. But I would have been petty. Okay. And that's Matisa now. I do want to say this, and I think it's so important in terms of the journey.
Yes.
There absolutely is a time from high school to college that I didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to. It really became an inward anger, right? And you don't want that. It became an inward frustration. And I feel like sometimes that angry Black girl moniker can come out because you're angry that your voice is not heard. You're angry because you're pushing down all of your feelings and your emotions. So there was a time where I walked around and I probably almost had a chip on my shoulder because I didn't know how to get that frustration out. And it's not like I wasn't in the hostile environment. I mean, my past university was amazing. I love that experience as well. But I can definitely pinpoint times where I was like, my voice wasn't heard. So I said all of that to you to say, Latoya, give yourself some grace. This is a journey. The Matisa that I am now is not the one that started as a professor at 30, 29, whatever, however old I was. But now I'm going to raise my hand. Excuse me, such and such. I have something to add. I love April's idea that sometimes, depending on the situation, it might not be best to talk about it right then. Unfortunately, make that appointment. But whatever the case, this is the point we're making. Say something.
Say something.
This is not the moment or the season to sit back waiting for somebody else to come to your rescue. Do it respectfully, do it with wisdom and discernment, but do it. That's the season that we're in now, because the more you push the culture, right, the culture has to change. The more you push the culture has to change. All right.
That's right. That's right.
What are some of your training you do with the staff or leadership teams for racial awareness or cultural sensitivity? Well, Ratarja, I'm so glad that you asked me that question.
Yes.
If anybody is interesting, I did not put her up to that. Part of my experience and just everything that I've been through really put a passion inside me to want to help organizations change, because what I've experienced, and April can I'm sure attest to this as well. A lot of the organizations that I was a part of were interested in having a program. So they would have Black History Day, or they would even celebrate Black History Month, but they did not want to change. So for the 4 years we were at Center, that we had all those things, but it wasn't until our voices were heard and we disrupted some stuff did they seriously start looking for African American faculty. Otherwise, they were cool with having a day. And a lot of organizations, even in 2020, are okay with that. My goal, my passion, my vocation is to come in and assess organizations to say, listen, your program is cool, but how many people of color do you have on your board? How many people of color do you have at the table who can make change? How many people do you have who are thinking about the organization? Because the other thing is, You get people in your organization who are people of color, and if it's not inclusive and they don't want to be there, guess what? They're leaving. There were many students that came in with April and I who couldn't take it.
That's right.
Their sophomore year, they were gone. Great people. We're still friends with them today. But the system wasn't good. So what do I offer? I offer a lot of training, Retarja, but you can go to my website, and I'm going to type this on here for anybody who's interested. It's wilbenenterprises.com. I do training on enterprises.com. I do training on what's called implicit bias. So those biases that are unconscious that we act on every day without thinking. I do training on how to have hard conversations with people and be authentic in your dialogue, right? How do we talk about these hard issues across race, across class? I do training talking about power dynamics in the workplace, right? So you've got all of these different hierarchies. To April's point, how do I address my leader? How do I talk to people who might be racially insensitive, but they're my boss? That's hard. There's a power dynamic there. There's a lot of other stuff that I do. Go to my website, and you can see the other things. But thank you for that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. Because you all provide that, and it's so needed. It's timely. It's perfect. So, hopefully other individuals will, look at that website as well.
Yeah. And I will say I have a company that I work with now, and things have shifted so much. They've already won 2 awards for diversity. They're really moving forward, and it's because we didn't just do a thing. We looked at the whole system. Jama, who is a wonderful friend of mine, says how to have a voice, breaking down communication barriers against diverse people would be a great title. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. And I love that too, Jama. And April, I want you to talk about this too in terms of communication barriers, because among other things, April is a counselor. But I really find, and we're going to go just a little bit longer, then we're going to wrap up. But I find, April, that a lot of people just don't know how to have conversation. And I'm going to be blunt because y'all know me by now. Love y'all. White people don't want to talk because they don't know what to say. A lot of them, not everybody, but this is what I hear. Black people don't want to talk because they don't want to come off angry, or they don't know how to articulate what they're feeling. And there could be a whole host of other things going on. And so we find that there are not cross conversations, and you have people in their factions talking about how we're going to deal with race, but nobody's talking to each other. How do we deal with that?
Yeah. I think it's good that even we brought up there's going to have to be kind of like mediators through this process.
Yes.
People who are skilled to have those discussions. And I'm appreciative even of some things that I've experienced through my career, because it's helped me develop better emotional intelligence to have the hard conversations.
That's it.
Not allow yourself to erupt, to also listen, truly listen, not wanting to just hear what they're saying to respond quickly, to not always come off as I'm coming to win, but I'm coming so that whatever the situation is can be moved. So if we take off the competitive nature sometimes that comes in communication, we can kind of get some things done. But in the state that we're in, it's going to take certain businesses, organizations, different ones to come in and be that mediator.
That's right.
For these discussions to honestly happen the way that they need to happen. And then hopefully we can start with our younger generation to that point, how to have a voice, breaking down communication barriers among diverse people. Look, that is a great title. We need to start that with our 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year, when they get teenagers, starting it at home, teaching that communication vibe, because for real, to be honest, if we all were honest, some people are not good communicators because in their household, it wasn't good communication.
That's true.
the communication blew up when it got to a hard situation, or it was like, shut up,
Right.
go to your room.
That's
So
right.
that's why people don't know how to communicate. It's shut down. Something comes up, don't talk about it, because all your young life bringing up in your home, you were told to shut up.
Yeah.
Or you were told that's none of your business. Or you were told, whatever it was, all of that stems to our adulthood. And then we just cannot communicate effectively. So we have to build that as well.
I would say too, I think at the heart of communication is trust. For me, even in the hard conversations, and I think you're exactly right, we haven't learned how to do it. We didn't do it well in our own households. But I think too, if you like for you and I trust you. I trust you with my feelings. I trust that you love me. Even when we disagree, and that's not all the time, but when we do, there's never a thought in my mind that April means me harm, or you know what I'm saying, that what you're saying is going to hurt me, because I know ultimately you love me and I trust that wholeheartedly. I think sometimes we can't get down to real communication because we're not in connection enough to trust each other. You know what I'm saying? So if I tell you something hard, because somebody asks a question or says something later that I wanted to kind of bring up, Mary, she says white people think race doesn't matter. And I think that's true of some, not all, but there are some people who think 2020, no, race is not a big deal.
Yeah.
There are white people that I know that I can talk to and share my feelings and share my hurts. And I don't feel like they may not understand. They might not get what I'm feeling, but I trust that because they know me and they love me, we can have some of those hard conversations. So how do you, I know we need a mediator and I agree with that. So you guys contact me, but how do we gain that trust across race or around some of these hard issues, do you think?
That is a complex question, because sometimes due to the lack of like proximity, like if we're not like in association together, I'm not going to develop that trust, but the conversation needs to be had.
Okay.
So maybe just sometimes for us, compartmentalizing potentially, how I think it was that book, it was about spouses, I think, to talk about, women are spaghetti and men are waffles, right? Yeah. So we can take that same title there and relate it to our communication here. Recognizing that there's some people that I can just be spaghetti with. I'm spaghetti when I'm talking to you. Like it just probably all runs together. And I know you get it. I know you're gonna take, and just hey. But some people I need to compartmentalize. Recognizing, I don't even have that level of trust with them, and I'm not going to get it. And I need to be okay with I'm not going to get that level of trust with them. But I still have to speak my truth.
Gotcha.
I still have to. So I just put them in this little section of the waffle. But, I'm still going to pull a little syrup on them, let them know, give you a little something.
Because you're right. You still have to be able to speak your truth. And what I hope comes out of this conversation right now, and I love the diversity that's, folks that are watching, that conversations have to be had and can be had. We just have to know they're uncomfortable. Yeah. Race is not a comfortable topic. It never has been. We have a very complicated, really horrible history in terms of the way we've done race over the years. And if nothing else, I would want to tell, my white friends, people that I'm acquainted with, people that I love, even if you don't get it from my perspective, I need you to just hear me out. Nobody is going to protest and do the things that they're doing every single day for nothing. It is because there is a heart cry that people have. That doesn't lessen the love that you have, right? That doesn't mean that the relationship that you had in the past is a fraudulent relationship. It's still a good one. But we need you to be able to hear us say, this is really hurtful right now, right? But you and I agree 100% that it's going to take everybody getting together to make a change. It can't be you over here and me over here and this person over here. Period. It's got to be everybody coming together to say, what is my part? How can I hear you? And then how do we get to work to make things change?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's situation by situation and person by person. So then you don't build up those barriers of distrust. So for example, if I have a bad encounter with one person, then the next one I encounter, I'm thinking they're going to be the same. Like you have to go literally situation by that's why biases, when people have those biases, it's rooted deeper. You got to ask them, that's the counseling piece. You got to get to the root. Where did so-and-so hurt you? Where were you? What age were you? What happened? You got to get to the root. That bias just didn't come up today.
Right.
It stemmed from something. And some people need to go prior to counseling too, to be very honest, to say, I need to find out where this comes from. Why do I feel this way? What is this that triggers me?
Yeah.
Talk about that. We're going to be free. We want to all be free in our minds and our spirit, our soul. We want to be free. Take out all of that that's in us. And sometimes it stemmed from places we don't know, generationally.
It's passed down.
It comes out and you don't know where it came from.
That's right.
Even dealing with that and addressing it. And the exposure of it begins the healing. Like, that's where it comes from. I saw a lady on Facebook that was really good. She shared a video how she didn't realize she had biases until all of this broke out. And she took moments of reflection and realized it stemmed from something her dad said to her when she was younger. She said they were walking down the street or something. And her dad said to her, "Come over here, mother, come over here. It's a black guy." And made her feel planted a seed. And she said she didn't realize till just recently, after all of this blow up, where it came from. She's free now. She was happy. She was like, "I'm so glad that I realized where it came from. It was when I was a little girl. My dad said that, and I always have had been skeptical of African American men from childhood." And that statement that her dad made. Wow.
I think that's so good. What we're talking about is exposure, right? Exposure to, and that's why even in our experience on Center's campus, I think some of those changes were made because we exposed the administration. Now it's not perfect, but we exposed them to our experience, we felt and fortunately they listened. Again, they still got some ways to go, as society does generally, but our voices, we made sure that our voices were heard. We're going to wrap up, but I wanted to make sure that we got Chris Naylor's comment, because I think it's our question. I think it's a good one. He says, first, thank you for leading the way on campus. Second, how might some of your lessons in the PWI carry over to children of color raised in white homes? I think that's a fantastic question. Let me just start by saying, thank you so much for the question. What I would say is, it's the same thing. Everybody at the base level wants to know that they're heard, that they're seen, and they're valued. I would start there. Yeah. And any of us who have children, we know that that's true. I don't care what kind of work you're doing. When a kid walks in the room, they want you to stop and acknowledge their presence.
That's true.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
You can talk about President of the United States, girl. They're like, don't you see me?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's part of what's happening, even with some of the frustration and anger that we're seeing. It's people saying, don't you see me? Don't you value my life? Don't you hear me? So I would just say to you, Chris, at the base level, that's exactly what children want. I would also say that if you are a white family raising children of color, expose them to their background, to their heritage. And let me just say this. I would not be a Black woman if I didn't say this. make sure that you are sensitive to their hair care. And that sounds weird, and that's cool if it does. But I'm serious. For people of color, hair is a serious thing. And I've had many experiences with either biracial children or children of color in white households. And because it wasn't until they were much older that they were learning, because for many people, your hair is part of your identity. Just is what it is. Yeah. So I would just say, teach them, their culture, teach them about various things, even if it seems as simple as hair, it matters. And it's not so much about the hair. It's about the fact that you as a person are saying, I'm going to do what's necessary to make you comfortable in your own skin.
That's good.
You're part of that for many of us. Oh, good. So, Chris, you probably are doing this already, Chris, but since you asked, I just wanted to make sure I put it out there, because there have been people, to be honest, where I'm looking at some crazy hairstyles, and I'm like, I wish I could tap that woman on her shoulder and say, go get her hair done, or come to me, I'll get it done. Yeah. But I also say,
but that goes to your point too about just connecting with other people that can assist. Just having outside sources that even help fuel what you're doing and trying to accomplish, nurturing this young child to actually be who they're purposed to be. Absolutely. And I do that as a parent myself. I always constantly, and Matisa knows this because I've told her this several times, raising my children, I've always prayed for God to send people their way to give them what I cannot. Mm-hmm. And in parenting, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to the point to recognize that we don't have it all that our children need, mm-hmm. That opens the door for them to receive the blessings and the giftings of other individuals around us who have certain pieces of their puzzle to give them.
That's good.
So I want to just, encourage you to do that. Be open to have other people who share your same heart and values and things, to steer them in the right direction, but they can give you components that you honestly do not have.
That's good. That's really good.
And you can be great parents. I feel like I'm a great parent, but I honestly do not have everything that my children need.
None of us do.
I just don't. Yeah. So I longed for that, and I prayed for that, and I'm appreciative because they have people that have come along and given them so many pieces that they needed for what they're purposed to do. I'm just a steward. I'm just a steward of a great gift.
That's
and
good.
So I want to make sure they get the water, they get all the nutrients they need from every resource that is needed for them to be the best that they can be.
That's good. April, I want to just ask, we're gonna close now. And I know you brought out some solutions. So what I'd like you to do in our close is to, number one, if there are any solutions or things that we've not discussed that you wanted to bring out, how can we're about change, right? I think it's great to reflect. I think there's healing in reflection. Mm-hmm. Stories that we tell really are to just expose the idea that there are challenges. But at the end of the day, we're about solutions. And we know, again, that it's going to take all of us. So first of all, give us any solutions that we've not talked about. And then lastly, what would be final words of advice or encouragement that you would give?
I think we listed some good solutions, but I will say this. We're all leaders. And sometimes we, as a society, has failed because the system has been the system to promote certain levels of status. But we all literally are leaders in some shape, form, or fashion. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage each one of us that this awakening that has taken place right now in the United States of America is beckoning you to look deep down into yourself, see what your passion is, see what you are, a change agent in some manner. See what pulls on you, good. What burdens you, what makes you excited. When you talk about it, your eyes brighten up. Get in that lane and do it well.
Yes.
It may not be on the platform. I like something that Dr. Wilbin posted recently on Instagram. Look, this revolution is not televised. If you're not the person put on TV, you are still an integral piece.
That's right.
There is a solution in you. You were born with the solution in you for 2020, or you would not be here. We were purposed for this time. I know it's difficult, but it's something in us that has some type of fortitude to press us to another level. And when you find what that burden, that passion is, that gift, that ability, do it and do it well. And I'm going to tell you something that I'm telling my own self. Be so focused on that you offend people. And what I mean by that is do not look to the left or to the right. Do your part, because none of us can do all of it, but you have a piece. You have a solution in you. You have something that you have to accomplish. Get into that lane. Look, Louisville is the home of the Kentucky Derby. They be putting those little things on the blinders on the horses.
Yeah.
Look, put your blinders on and you say, love you and love you. But my assignment, what I have to accomplish is this. And if everybody does that, I'm telling, the pieces will come together and we'll get some things done. But what happens is I think we get distracted and then we don't complete what our piece was to accomplish whatever needed to be accomplished. Yes, and we mentioned this earlier. Yes, Martin Luther King, different ones. You see them in the history books. You see them, on TV and movies that come up. But there was so many other people behind the scenes that did the work.
That's right.
The unsung heroes.
That's exactly right.
And they were leaders just as much as anyone else.
That's right.
So when we take those opportunities and use our voice, speak up in the moment, gain the courage that we need to speak up in the moment. And if we could do something, look, we are on this this session here tonight with one of the prayer warriors of the century, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prayer, look, undefeated. If every day we can wake up and just put our repellent on and be ready, like, God, I need you because I'm going to face some things today that's going to try to bite me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put on my repellent right now in the name of Jesus. And I need you, God, to help me to respond in a way that is going to help move something.
Yeah.
Because essentially we want people to hopefully change. We can't change everybody, but our goal is to hopefully plant a seed and somebody else water it and God will supply the increase that, because we cannot, whatever we do, we cannot legislate morality.
True.
And it's a whole deeper issue sometimes with people's heart conditions.
True.
That they need a change of heart, transformation. Some people honestly need deliverance from some of the strongholds that are keeping them in these
bound.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. But at least we can do our part when we encounter people. And most importantly, we can be that change agent. And then if we're raising children, just make sure we're raising those children to be the future. Look, we're raising the future.
That's it.
So that they won't encounter as much. Because we're never going to have a utopia. I just don't believe in that. That's my opinion. We're never going to have a utopia, but we can help the next generation have such a powerful voice, stance, and movement that they drowned out all the naysayers.
I love it. That's so good. That's so good.
Drown them out.
Drown them out. I would say for me, I would give two pieces of advice. And I just want to acknowledge that my other mother is on, Miss Pauletta Smith. She's never on. So, hi. Anyway, what I was going to say is, and I think this is really important, two things. One is, I think we need to lean into the hard places.
That's good.
We have to lean in. I feel like for a lot of people, again, the reason why we don't have more progress is because people don't like discomfort. They don't like being uncomfortable. We don't like not knowing what to say. And so instead of leaning into the hard conversations, we withdraw, or we have, conversations among people who have similar experiences. So I can call you maybe and talk about things that I've dealt with, but I can't call Janie and talk to her because I don't know how to have the conversation, or I don't know how she's going to respond, or I don't know what it's going to feel like. For things to truly change, we have to lean into those hard conversations. It doesn't matter what it feels like in the moment, right? When you have something stuck in your arm, that hurts horribly. But by the time you pull it out and you now take that, needle out or whatever it is that's stuck in your arm, the pressure immediately lets up.
That's
right. And I
right.
feel like we're walking around with these needles of racism, microaggressions, implicit bias, right? Mm-hmm. Conversations that people are having. We have all these thorns stuck in us, and we don't want to be able to talk to somebody and say, hey, I need you to pull this out. Like, what you said to me really hurt my feelings. You know what I'm saying? Or if a person who doesn't quite understand, don't turn the TV off. Don't dismiss what you're seeing as, oh, that's those people. No, if there are folks that you know that can help you understand the conversation, start having those conversations. You might not agree.
That's right.
You might not like what each other says, but that's not the point of the conversation. The point is to listen and to hear each other. And I feel like we don't do that enough. And then the second thing that I would say is we all, and this relates to what you just said, April, so beautifully, we all have to become accountable for what we're doing. We have to be accountable. I've been in the presence of people and someone has told a racist or at least a culturally insensitive joke. And there are people, a white person, and then there'll be a white person in the midst who won't say anything then, but they'll call me later and say, oh, Matisa, I'm sorry that such and such said that. The same way that I'm expected to talk in the moment, I want some allies to speak up in the moment. You heard what that person said just like I did, right? I need you to speak up. If you don't see representation, to your point, April, where you are, don't leave it to a person of color to make the call. You say, this would be a better conversation if we had more women, or this would be a better conversation if we had Black people. What would this conversation be like if there was a Latino at the table? Mm-hmm. What would that be like if we were all cognizant of what's missing and we help fill those missing pieces?
Right.
Man, I'm telling you, it'd be a shift.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that goes to even my point of people finding what their burden is, because somebody watching this and somebody who will watch this, they feel that. That's why it bothers them. That's why it bothers them. That's why they call you on the side, because it bothers them.
Yes.
That's a part of they are part of the solution. That's why it tugs at them, and other people don't recognize it or just let it go by, because they have a voice in that. And so just step out and leap and take that fear factor, because it's going to take a couple times of just being scared to just do it. To jump out and say, hey, what do you mean by that? That statement kind of rubbed me the wrong way, or it didn't sound right, or what was that? And that person probably is not going to respond well. So get ready for that too. And once you do it a couple times, you'll just feel more comfortable standing up. And then also, even if that person doesn't respond well, they'll know what not to say around you.
Good.
You know what I'm saying? You'll confront their hypocrisy. You'll confront, what's really in them, and they will, make those adjustments and hopefully essentially change. Hopefully people start being accountable to what they say and do, if we help each other. And I just wanted to add to that. I'm sorry, I know you were trying to end, but I wrote down while you were talking that we have to be okay with humbling ourselves sometimes and just saying, I'm sorry.
That's good.
That's a powerful thing as well.
That's good.
To honestly humble yourself and say, I'm sorry. Maybe it's for something you said, you did, or even something that you're feeling and can't properly articulate. I'm sorry. Those are two powerful words that helps heal.
Very much so. There are things that I've talked about in class that I didn't know, certain groups that I didn't know exactly how to address. And I would say it up front, like, I don't know how you feel about this, being a student who's not able-bodied and you're in a wheelchair. Like, I didn't know that because my hallway is so small, you can't get your wheelchair down the hallway. I didn't realize that until I tried to get you to come to my office and you couldn't get there and you had to call me. And I didn't say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you want me to meet you. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I never thought about it.
That's right.
I don't know what it feels like to be in a wheelchair. So I think, gosh, that is so powerful, April. I'm sorry is huge and it's powerful.
Yeah.
And lets me know your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not about being right. It's about trying to understand somebody else's experience. And that is powerful.
Mm.
So I would just say in closing, and we're way over time, but we're going to end in prayer because I feel so led to do it. We're just going to kind of touch and agree. But thank you, April, for your words of wisdom, your experiences, for sharing this opportunity and answering the call to say yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You helping me heal through the process. I mean, because I've been emotional these last couple of weeks. It's difficult. I've had different days of anger. I had days of just crying and not knowing how to express.
Yeah.
And just processing. So to talk it out, it's good. And we've talked some other days too, but this is good as well. So thanks.
Absolutely. And I know there are some people watching. Jama, you talked about the students that you worked with. I know there are other people who are educators and it's a variety of people. So I'm grateful for that. So let's just pray in closing. God of mercy and of grace, we thank you for your kindness. Thank you for allowing us to be here, God. Thank you for this moment. This moment will not go for naught. This moment, God, will not pass without us learning the lessons and doing what we need to change. Thank you, Lord God, for putting this in this time. We are not here by accident. We're not here by happenstance, but we're here because you designed for us to be here in this moment. Equip us. Strengthen us, God. Connect us to people who aren't like us, God. Give us the strength to reach across class and gender and race to say, listen, we're all human. What can we do to do better together? We ask you in the name of Jesus to bless everybody watching or who will watch, God. Those people who are making decisions and dealing with this on a daily basis, give them discernment, wisdom. Give them the words to say. Give them a hunger, God, that they will not just pursue justice, but they'll pursue relationship. They'll pursue relationship, God, that represents the creativity and the multiplicity of people that you put on this earth. We are here together for a purpose. I pray for every educator, every parent, God, raising the next generation. Give us the strength to impart and speak into our children truth, justice, God, love, in the name of Jesus, strength, God. Let this generation be better than ours, more loving than ours, who will pursue justice, God, more than ours. We thank you for this platform, this privilege, this time. Bless the works of our hands. Multiply it, oh God, for your glory, and we'll give your name honor, glory, and praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Listen, my name is Dr. Matisa Wilbin, and I am a Disrupt Her. We are signing off. We'll meet you back here next Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want you to connect with me on Instagram. You can go to at Matisa Wilbin and also at the DisruptHers. April, how can people get in touch with you?
Olive Tree Resources at Olive Notes on Instagram as well as Facebook. Olive Tree Resources are at Olive Notes, either one, but Olive Tree Resources.
Awesome. And then I didn't ask you, thank you all so much for joining. I didn't ask you really quickly, what do you provide services that you think could be a good resource during this time?
Yes, most definitely. If you go to our website, olivetreepartner.com, actually throughout this whole month, we're offering healing conversations for individuals. It's basically virtual counseling sessions so that you can find the root. That's our goal. And our 3 core counseling values are that you talk about it, think through it, and thrive over it.
Wow.
And that's our gift to this generation, is to help people get through those hard conversations and moments, so that we can all be who we're purposed to be, because we're called to embrace, empower, and elevate leaders. That's our goal. So if you want to sign up for one of those sessions, just visit the website and provide your information, and we can set up a time to talk.
Awesome. My diversity, equity, and inclusion, my website is in the comments, but it's www.wilbonenterprises.com. We'd love to do some training with you. There are resources out there. Tap in, connect. Let's keep on disrupting. We'll see you next week. Bye.